So let's move on to hash-based sharding. So hash-based sharding was new in 2.4. So it's not available in the older versions. It was added in the 2.4 release. And in a lot of ways, it's like a MongoDB managed version of pre-splitting, right? So we essentially take some of the work off your hands and give you an easy way to sort of randomly distribute your writes. You have to have the similar considerations to pre-splitting. You're going to want to make sure that whatever value you decide to hash and use as your shard key has a high cardinality. What do I mean by high cardinality? High cardinality means there needs to be lots of values in there. You don't want to do something that only has 3 values or 4 values. You're not going to get a good hash off of that. There is one other small caveat here, and that is that floating point numbers can be a bit of a problem. It's covered in the documentations as to exactly why that is. And you'll probably be able to guess once you actually see what the computed hash value looks like that we're using a 64-bit integer. So it turns out there's some issues converting floating point numbers back to 64-bit integers and vice versa. So anything that is using a floating point number as a value is probably a bad choice for a hash-based shard key. So just use that with caution. But you do want to have a nice large range of values so that your hash is nicely distributed. So what's MongoDB actually doing here? Well, what you do is you pick a field. And in our example, I'm going to use the classic _ID again. And on that field, you create an index. And up until now, we've been creating indexes with something like, _ID 1 or date 1, something like that. That's what we've been passing in when we're doing an ensure index command, something along those lines. And it's not terribly complicated at all, but the ensure index command, when you're creating an index, that computed hash, you still run the ensure index command, but instead you pass in something like this. So we create an index with a computed hash, ensure index ID hash, something similar to that, and that then allows you to pick this computed hashed value as a shard key. So when you're then doing the shard collection command, you pass in whatever you hashed as your shard key. At the moment, it only supports single values, so it doesn't support compound fields at the moment. If you do want to combine, say, I don't know, date and user ID, then you'll have to manually combine those in a separate field and then create a hashed index on that concatenated field yourself. So if you do wish to do a sort of combined value and then hash that, you have to do that yourself first and then create the appropriate index.